We're here on post-match as Everton have lost another game, which is really sad to say. It's been Wolves 3, Everton 0, which I think probably flattered us that we only got beat 3-0 down at Wolves this afternoon. I've got Warren and Les with me now. Pretty pretty difficult discussion, this one, lads. Well, in regards to it being a loss that feels a lot familiar compared to how poor we've been at the start of the season and last season and bits and pieces like that. There's plenty to get through here. I'm going to start with you first, Les. What did you think about it? First of all, what did you think of the team that he set up again in this? I think a lot of surprises were that Gomez was out the side, considering he was considered as the man that came back and made everyone lift and feel a lot better about him being in the team. What did you make of the setup with five at the back?
I'm never really too happy with five at the back, to be honest. It's one of those things that every manager seems to come in and try at some point, and it never really works. I know it has worked a couple of times in the past, but it's one I'm never comfortable with. And I think you saw from that first half, the players aren't comfortable with it. It's a weird thing where you kind of assume that if you're playing five at the back, you're going to be more solid in defence. But having that extra man in the middle of the two centre halves often confuses them. I think you look at the second goal, and was it so Michael Keane just got raced past and did a really sort of weak attempt to put some pressure on that player, and then you had two other players on the fella, I can't even remember who scored for them, two other players on in, but he got between the two of them, and it's like no one really knows what they're meant to do in that formation. And another thing with it as well is, I think if you're playing five at the back, unless you have got two shit up midfielders, you can't play two in the middle. Yeah. I know that was technically 5-4-1, but when you're playing two wide fellas, they're not going to do much of the work in the middle. And I don't think Garner and Onana are good enough to play as a two in the middle. You've got to be exceptional. So I always think if you're playing five at the back, you've got to go three in the middle, two up front. And then you don't get the situation as well, but like Calvert-Lewin, where he looked completely isolated, completely devoid of any confidence as well, sadly. I think it was summed up in that one that got flagged offside eventually, where he did a really weak hit around the keeper. He just looked like he had no confidence. A couple of months back, maybe he's just like slotting that straight past him. So yeah, I think the formation wasn't great. I don't think it really adds anything to the defence when you throw three or five at the back, however you want to call it. And I also think the players look knackered. We've said in the past quite a lot about Dice's substitutions. And this is when it comes and bites you on the arse this time of year, when you've been playing the same squad week in, week out, very few substitutions. No one's been getting a break. And they did look knackered today. I thought Dwight McNeil looked exhausted. In particular, yeah, it was probably always going to happen, wasn't it? We've probably got a bit ahead of ourselves. I saw Matt on Twitter said you were right about your.
Do you know what you said there, Les? You've said that shot far too early on this, and do you know what I felt? Do you know when you say those things in life and you think you want to turn to somebody and say, "I fucking told you so"? It was the least amount of things I've ever done in my life, and honestly, people are saying like I must be happy about it. Absolutely not. I didn't want to be happy by one iota of what happened in those games since I mentioned it pre Fulham. But Warren, to come to you now, that five at the back to me, like Les says there, I think he's spot on. An Everton manager, it seems to be something that they end up falling to. It's like a journey that they're on, and they end up having to stop in the shop. That's five at the back. What did you make of that setup?
Well, it didn't work today, and I think I'm not.
Have you ever seen it work, by the way?
I was just about to say Burnley a couple of weeks back worked perfectly. So we're not. The criticism I had with it today is when it was quite clearly obvious it wasn't working, he didn't change it quick enough. And I think if he had maybe we would have seen a bit of a bit towards like it was the final 10-15 minutes where we seemed to get a little bit more of the ball. I completely agree with Les. I thought we were knackered today. I thought we just looked off it. We just looked like we didn't have enough in the tank to play the game that we've been playing recently, where let's face it, we've had two tough games in Spurs and City, which I think back to back for any team in the Premier League to play them two is going to be tough going. And we've given it all. We give our all against both of them. And I think to come to a Wolves side on the up, who have had a couple of been in form lately, I think it was always going to be tough. But that was my main criticism of the formation, because as I say, it worked brilliantly against Burnley. And you may say, you know, Burnley are not as good a side the Wolves and are down there, you know, down the wrong end of the table and whatever. But I think I'd hate for us to be predictable. I'd hate for us to be playing the same thing week in, week out, and we get found out. I think a lot of credit actually has to go to Wolves there. I think they played very well. I think they beat our press probably the best out of any team in the last month or two we've played, actually. And they probably took advantage of the fact that, like Les said, we're knackered at the minute. I completely agree. I thought McNeil looked shot today. Not that he played bad, but he didn't have the legs. It's little things as well. You know, when the second ball falls, we just didn't look like we had the energy and the legs to compete today. And I thought, you know, whilst I didn't think there was a lack of effort, it looked like there was a lack of effort, if that makes sense, because we just didn't look like we had it in us to compete. So whilst the formation for me, yes, it was a criticism today. It's not necessarily for me the formation itself, it's the fact that he didn't change it quick enough. And I think a couple of weeks back, Dave, me and you had the conversation about Dyche, and we said about, you know, he's the perfect man at the minute for Everton. And listen, I'm not changing my mind on that. I think the situation we are in, he is brilliant for us. But we also mentioned we weren't going to get too far ahead of ourselves and say that he was, you know, he's the best manager we've had in a number of years or whatever, because he does have his flaws. And I think his flaws were there for all to see today. His lack of changes, you know, late in the game, too late again. I think the fact that when you're throwing on Dan Juma and co with 10 minutes left, what you're asking them to change the game at 3-0. Of course, they're not going to look brilliant. And I think that was quite poor, really, from his part to throw them on that late. I think if you're going to make the changes, do them earlier when we could all see at half time the 5 wasn't going to work. And you know, also as well, look, we've had you know, everyone harps on about, and quite rightly, about the fact we're missing Decore. I mean, we've missed Decore massively the last few games, but I thought that was a perfect game there for Idrissa Gueye today. I thought and listen, I think he's coming for a bit of stick, in the sense of, there's been games this season where we've gone, he hasn't looked our best player, he's looking his age or whatever. That's the type of game he would have been good for us today, just breaking them up a little bit, because they look very good on the counter today, Wolves. Don't know if you remember one of the first attacks they had, they should have scored off that. It was our free kick, and they've gone the other end, and it's 3v1. And it was the type of game there for Idrissa Gueye to step into, I think, and just nullify that. And you know what Les has said there about the fact that you need your midfielders to be on it if you're playing that system. I think he would have fitted well into that system today. So listen, we can talk all about the fact that it was a lousy performance, and it was a very poor performance. That screamed to me of an Everton team that just needs a little breather, that have given everything in December. And whereas, you know, I saw Matt's tweet myself, Les, and whereas Matt's, you know, sort of said about you, Dave, being right and all that, I think where you, Dave, were not getting too high about the fact that we won them games, and look, let's not look too far ahead of ourselves. I also think that we shouldn't today either look too down on ourselves either. Results have gone our way today. I still think we're miles better than we were 12 months ago. We're in a much better position in terms of style of play, quality of play, the manager we've got. And I know the table doesn't make for great reading at the minute, but I still believe.
We all know why that is, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. We do. And look, hopefully that gets resolved sooner rather than later. Because I mean, how long this appeal going to go on for? But that's probably for another show on another day, not on a post match. But I'm not getting too down on myself. It was a poor result. Yes, it was not a great performance by really anyone today, apart from probably, I'd say, Mikalenko. I thought Pickford made a few great saves as well. But whereas, listen, like Matt said when we were off the back of them 4 wins, let's enjoy it. But you were quite right in saying let's not get ahead of ourselves too much. I think the same's for today. Let's not get too down on ourselves. It's a poor performance in the context of it. We've had 2 very difficult games previously, and then going away when you're probably not at your 100% best to a Wolves team who were on the up. I think let's not get too down on it either. Let's still look positively into the new year and going into the second half of the season.
I think that's spot on what he said there, Les. I mean, I'm not sitting here waiting to throw out pieces of humble pie to everybody on what I said, but it is interesting the way things sort of pan out, isn't it? Because, like when I said there, you're what, a matter of weeks away, previously from saying that, wow, look if we do well there, the way everybody's stacked up above us in the Premier League would easily be a mid-table side by now.
Yeah.
Your tough run of form going into this as well obviously doesn't help. I mean, if you go back to an Everton side that's been at its best in our recent lifetime, there's no way they're going to Spurs and playing against Man City, getting 6 points from them and then just taking the piss out of Wolves when you've gone there. You're not getting 9 points from that realistically anyway.
No.
The thing that sort of got me the other side of the coin is Dice really annoyed me today, and maybe I'm going a little bit too far at the time, but he properly pissed me off. I mean, I was doing cartwheels around our living room watching it. I couldn't initially the lineup of five, like you rightly said, it just seems to come along at some point for any Everton manager. For most managers, I imagine when they go to an away game, I think what you both threw in there was that sort of how a lot of people are knackered at this stage. That run of games that everybody has in the winter, we simply haven't got the squad to cope with that. Let's face it. So he's probably stood there at training thinking, right, we need to do it this way. Got to have 5 defenders to keep things as solid as we possibly can. We've kept loads of clean sheets lately. Just need to make sure we nullify any opponent we've got. What got me really pissed off about him was that it was blatantly obvious, and again, I think I wasn't said it then, going into half time with what we were doing wrong so much, and it felt to me it almost felt inevitable we'd be throwing ourselves after that game had we not made a change at half time. The fact about that is he doesn't make one until there's 25 left, an hour, just over an hour left, I think it was. Made me think of Frank Lampard straight away.
Yeah.
He always used to wait until 70 before he made the change. I think the easiest change that was really, I think, front and centre for every fan would be take Keane off and put Gomez on. Anything like that where you put an additional midfielder in play. What we had in midfield, I looked at Onana, just looked like he wasn't particularly given a stance inside that midfield. Various occasions he'd be dropping short to take the ball off any of our centre-backs. Later on, you'd see him trying to play a little bit further forward. Didn't look like he was given any sort of instruction for me. Again, what I mentioned, Mykolenko, I actually felt really, really sorry for him because he had nobody. And this is what a 5-man defence probably does to that. McNeil on that side isn't in a system where he's constantly tracking back with him. He's in there to stay up as part of that 4 that's in front. So you're seeing him running around on his own, and Wolves exploited that. There are so many on this list that each of us would go through that pissed us off the most. That setup though led to a lack of substitutions that needed made, particularly at half time, let alone when they actually came on.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Once you've gone with a setup like that, it's actually harder to make the substitutions without making a complete change to the system. And I'm assuming that he's worked with this system up until the game in training. This has been like, right, This is what we're going to do, Wolves. This is how we're going to play it. So to tear that up at half time, although I think that was the exact right thing to do, you kind of made it a bit more difficult on yourself because you've got to change the whole system. But on the flip side of that, the players look far more comfortable in that system. You know, I think having 3 across the middle of a back 4 gives you just as much defensive coverage as having 5 across the back and 2 in the middle. Probably more. It just seems like a more solid system. The players are used to playing it. And yeah, I think, as I said, we've sort of picked on Dice about the substitutions in the past. And I think today, everyone could see at half time something needed to change. And he just didn't do it. He waited. Were we 3-0 down before he made the changes?
I think it was 3-2. Yeah, I think it was 3 actually at the time.
And just on that lack of cover down the left-hand side with Mykolenko, that was like exploited for their first goal brilliantly because Mykolenko got dragged into the middle to cover something. Now, if you're playing as a wing-back in a 5-man defence, you shouldn't be bothering yourself with getting in the middle. But obviously something had broken down there. He had to make the run across, just leaving that man out wide to just cross a really nice ball in. Like, it was good save from Pickford as well. It was just, I can't believe we never got it clear after he made that initial save. But yeah, you say it's tinkering with too many things, and you're not getting the best out of all your players. But again, it was down to the fact that Wolves were pretty good today. They didn't give Everton a minute on the ball. They properly harried Everton. Looked really good on the attack. Weren't really bothered by anything we did. They just took any sort of attacks we had. he'd snuffed them out. And I think apart from that shot from Dwight McNeil, which would have been an amazing goal, by the way. Apart from that, I don't think we actually. I mean, I know that's not on target because it hit the bar, but we didn't actually have a shot on target.
We didn't. No,
you know, that's been the surprising thing for me about Dice, the fact that the amount of shots we do have and the amount of worry we do cause other teams going forward. But I think when you look at it today, you've got tied players out there like McNeil. You've got Harrison, who's hit and miss at the best of times. He's probably knackered because he's played pretty much every minute of every game. Calvert-Lewin just looks devoid of any confidence. When you're throwing all that forward against a decent team like Wolves, who are on a really good run of form at home in particular, it's a lot to ask. And I think as you both said, we shouldn't be too despondent about this. It was going to happen. I said after the game, that felt like one of those 4-0 defeats we always get from time to time under Moyes. You know, when we just got it's in my head as we always used to go to West Brom and get battered 4-0. It probably happened once or twice. It seemed like it was all the time. But he always seemed to have one of those results in it, didn't he, Moyes? We'd be doing okay, and then we'd go and get walloped somewhere, and then we'd be all right after it. So I think it just feels like that. We've got the cup game Thursday now, and we've got a break of 10 days then until Villa. So, you know, hopefully they won't piss off around the other side of the world or something stupid like that. Just get some rest and some training in ahead of that Villa game, because that's a massive game now, isn't it? It's, you know, we can't bank on getting any points back. So we've got to be looking at these home games, because that away form isn't going to last forever. And obviously it hasn't already. But it's going to be hard second half of the season to get all those results away from home. We need to get that home form back up. And Villa is probably as good a chance as any, because they're not very good away from home. And they seem to be in a little bit of a sticky patch themselves today, just about beat 10-man Burnley. So, yeah, I don't think anyone should be too despondent from this, but it feels like a kick in the nuts, though, doesn't it, all the same? It was nice when we were winning loads. It was lovely.
Well, that was the thing. It was going to come to an end at some point, wasn't it? The manner in which it has today has been the killer blow for me, because we were decent at Spurs. Probably should have took a point there. We go 1-0 up against Warren as well. And just coming over back to you there, Warren, with this, you like Les says there, something always seems to happen as a negative in the Midlands. But you get to a point like this. If I was to show you this where we are ahead of going into 2024, given all the shite that's happened at the start of the season with I'm not saying it again, with the 10-point crap and all that. If Everton were in this position right now, given all that, would you take it? Would you have took it?
What, knowing what we know now, if you'd have said to me, do you mean
including
everything? Yeah, including everything. It's a tough one, because I mean, without that 10 points, and we can talk about it, and we probably will be talking about it until the decision's made either way on appeal.
Just before you answer that, we were in 19th place when we got them, weren't we? I think.
Yeah.
Well, so we were put into 19th by getting the 10 points. And
we were 5 points off at that, 3 points off, something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, of course, the obvious answer without the 10 points is of course I think we'd still be in 9th or 10th now, wouldn't we, without that? And we're gonna keep referring to that because of such a monumental point in our season and probably in our history what it is. So it's only right that we're going to keep referring to that. With the 10 points in hand now, would I have taken it? I'm going to have to say yes, because, you know, them 4 wins just really propelled us forward. And we got to a point, I think, where we were 7 points off, weren't we? And I know Luton and Sheffield United and Burnley have had a couple of results here and there to claw themselves sort of back in within contention, Luton especially. But I still feel, and we had this conversation, Dave, I still feel that we are miles better than the teams not only below us, but I mean, Brentford for me are in free fall. Yeah. And I think that we've got every chance of the longer they go without having Tony and Mbeumo's injured now, isn't he, for about 3 or 4 months. The other thing to factor into this as well, you're asking me this question, would I have taken it? A lot of teams now are going to lose players to the Asian Games and the African Cup of Nations. We're only, I think, going to miss Idrissa Gueye.
That's an excellent point, that, yeah.
So I think going into that, looking ahead with that, yes, I would have, and this is why I'm not getting too down about it. Look, listen, we're watching the game today. Of course, you know, when your team loses, you think the world's against you with everything, but you've got to put everything into context. And I just feel that going ahead into these games, we have got a tough run of games coming up again now. It's a quick turnaround where we play City and Spurs again, but I'd fancy us against Spurs at home. because I thought we played brilliant against them. And they're, you know, looking at their performance against Brighton, they're not brilliant away from home either. And if we set up correctly, we've got every chance. And, you know, talking to a couple of Spurs fans after that game against them, they just couldn't believe they got away with that. They're like, that's the best Everton side we've seen come here in years. So, yeah, I probably would have taken it away. There's a couple of key factors, though, Dave, for me going forward that we need to talk about, and they need to be addressed pretty quickly. And the biggest one for me, and I'm sure you would have brought this up later on, but I'm going to bring it up now if that's okay. We need to have a conversation about Calvert-Lewin, because it's one of three things for me. It's either, and I don't believe this, by the way, it's either he's not good enough, he's not 100% fit, or he's just completely devoid of confidence, because this is now several games in a row where he's missing gilt-edged chances. And I know it was offside, that opportunity he had, but
it doesn't matter when he didn't know, does it? Do you know what I mean?
He did have another one as well. Yeah, he didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
He did have another one as well.
He had one against City where he probably should have made it 2-2, and at that point anything can happen. He's missed a number of opportunities this year. Now, I don't for one second believe he's not good enough, but there's something not right there at the minute. I don't know if it's that he's not 100% fit. I don't know if it's just that he's completely devoid of confidence, or both. But
how long then? How long then do you get to a point where you think it shifts from, oh, he's devoid of confidence, to, oh, you know, this lad just can't compete at this level anymore?
Well, this is the $64,000 question, isn't it? Because I think without that, we mentioned the core, and I'm going to say it again. And you made a great point, Les, in your opening thing that you said, in that without someone backing him up, particularly in that system, he's isolated. I think you have got to take that into account, that when you're a striker, listen, I used to play up front, and I'm not sitting, obviously completely different level from Premier League, but it's the worst position on the pitch when you're not getting supplied the balls forward to get yourself into them positions. And it's horrible when you've got to try and feed off scraps. And I think I just worry about it, because obviously with his record, and he has looked a lot stronger than in previous years, and I know we've got Beto to back him up now and everything, but if there was ever anyone who needed the goal, it's that lad. So I think it is a little bit of, he needs to core back, or he needs that backup. And listen, he was probably a little bit unlucky not to have that goal against Spurs, because, you know, that foul, you know, God, I mean, that should have been his goal, and then maybe that just does his confidence a world of good, and maybe we don't have to, you know, even have this conversation. But the longer this goes on, Dave, it is a question that we've got to think about, because it's costing us, and we all know from the last few years not having him in the team, the biggest thing what led us to them relegation scraps was the fact we didn't score enough goals. And I'm going from the fact that them 4 wins we had, we scored, what was it, something like 12 goals in 4 games, whatever it was, something like that, 12, 13 goals. So, like that, so I'm not afraid of us not being able to score goals. And the way Dice has set up and played all season, we've always looked the threat, and me and you have had the conversation about the fact that we've had lots of shots on target in games. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. But at some point, you need your striker to put them in. At some point, you need your striker to be getting into double figures to help you towards that end. And the longer this goes on, the more worried I'm not just only going to get about us, but about him. And this is probably the conversation until probably leaves Everton, just because of the record he's had with injuries. We're probably always going to have this conversation, particularly if he hits a patch where he doesn't score. I probably would have brought Beto on a lot earlier today than what he did. And we've talked about the subs and everything. I just think with Beto, I think he's got a bit of a license, really, just to be a nuisance. We saw that on the other night against City, and we probably weren't expecting him to score, but he just got something about him that can allow everyone else to, and just takes that pressure off a little bit. I think the longer it goes where Calvert-Lewin's not scoring, it's going to be a worry. And I just feel that it's getting to a point now where he's missing too many opportunities. And I don't want to be that person, because, listen, there's games this season, Bournemouth in particular, where he was outstanding, probably our best player on the pitch. So I don't want to go down that route of he's not good enough. But like I said, sooner rather than later, if you want to be one of them sides that stays mid-table and looks forward rather than down the table, you need your striker to be hitting double figures, and we haven't had that for a long time, unfortunately, and that's what's really costing us, I think, as well.
Just one thing on that, I don't think the team are doing enough to help him either. So as you said, Warren, he's been dead isolated, and he really was isolated today. It was like the sort of bad old days where he'd win a flick on and have to chase his own flick on down. But he wasn't even getting the opportunity to make the flick on because he just wasn't really getting the ball. Then when he did get the ball, now I know we've all said like that one that was offside, he didn't know it was offside, and it looked like a player very low on confidence the way he tried to knock it around the keeper. Didn't knock it wide enough, didn't knock it fast enough. But he had one in the first half, before that one anyway, where, oh no, it was second half, I think Gomez played him in. And no, it wasn't
when
Gomez.
Was it when he dinked it?
When he dinked it, yeah.
Yeah, and he just crawled wide, didn't he?
Yeah, and it crawled wide. But the thing there should have been 2 or 3 players in the box there, ready for that, in case it comes off the keeper, it's the post, doesn't go in. There's a tapping on the back post there. If one of those like attacking players gambles on that, you scored. It's a tapping for them. And I don't think the team are helping the attacking play enough in that regard, especially today. It seemed like there was a bit of a preoccupation in worrying about sort of their midfield and what they do, and not getting the ball forward. And when we did, we weren't attacking in numbers. Like, you think back to the Palace game, the first goal we scored, we had 5 players in the box when Mikalenko nets that header. We've not been doing that lately. It's been like just 1 or 2 players in the box, and it's not enough. Got to attack in numbers, and I think we've stopped doing that, and that's not helping either.
I think that's a good. Sorry, Dave, before you go on, and just to follow up on that, I think that's an excellent point. And listen, I don't want to sound like I'm writing him off.
I agree. I agree with you.
I'm not, and I know I said, look, it's 1 or 3 things. It could be that he's not good enough, and I don't believe that. I just feel that the longer this goes on, there will be questions asked. Yeah. And listen, we've got Palace next, and then we could play Villa the next league game at home, and he could have one of his classic Dom performances where he just dominates that back 4 or back line, and we're all raving about him, and that could easily happen. So I'm not writing him off. I'm just saying the longer it goes on, it's going to be a worry.
No, I think there are a lot of mitigating circumstances with him as well. Not least the opponents that we've had too. Let's face it, you're playing against probably the best team in the world in Man City, and you're playing away at Spurs, where a goal should have stood that he scored. So, from that side of things, it's like you feel a little bit, any criticism on him feels a little bit harsh given what's gone against him in the last few weeks. To play devil's advocate between you both, and first to you on this, Les, where does Sean Dyche factor into this? Because moaned about the lack of substitutions, and I think his management today was really, really poor. That in terms of setups as well. But I think we've all mentioned there we're desperate to have a 10 up where he needs to be. Do you think of Dyche that, well, when you see him like this, do you then put Beto in as your number 1? Effectively your number 9? And then you leave him on the bench, just basically like for like switch, where it's Calvert-Lewin who comes on for the last half hour, but it's Beto who starts. I think he's done it once so far.
Yeah,
I can't remember who it was against. Did he start at Beto and had Calvert-Lewin on the bench? What game was that?
City just recently won it.
Yeah,
City.
Was it City?
Yeah.
And he's got the options to do that, and you would think that an unfit Decore there, surely he feels he's got a player in there who can operate in that exact role that we want, and that is effectively a 10. You wouldn't say a traditional 10, but one that is capable of playing there, a player who's got the license to come up and play 10, 15 yards behind the striker that you've got. The other side of it as well, the other hope you could refer to, which I think many people have put towards me, I think it's quite ridiculous, is play the 2 of them up top. I don't think that'd ever work for us. So yeah, I've just gone around the corner there, but Dyche has got a role in all this, hasn't he? If he sees Calvert-Lewin is struggling, do you either try and improve who's in and around them so it creates more chances? Because that's also part of it, like you said. You put in a Palace, you're putting loads of people in the box. It's bound to come to him more times than not, and he's going to score goals. Do you persist with thinking that's going to come right at some point? Or do you look at it and think, right, we need to make these changes now? Dom, mate, you can just go and have a relax for a bit. You're on the bench. Take the pressure off your shoulders. When you come on, try and do your best type of thing. Problem with all of that, though, Les, before you answer the question, we're 1 point above the relegation zone now. So that becomes even more of a difficult decision.
Yeah, it's it's difficult, especially with a striker as well, because strikers are like, it's the one sort of position on the park where you say you need to run a games, even if you're out of form, you need to play through it because you will get that chance. It might go in off your arse, your elbow, not your elbow, whatever, but it might go in, and then that sort of sets you up. Then you've got that goal, and you can kick on from there. When you take a striker out, it's seen. It's not. It's never seen as rotation, is it? It's seen as he's dropped. He's been dropped there.
That's a negative decision for him, isn't it? He's going to go home and think, put his head down, and talk to his missus and say, "Have you seen that at work, love? I feel like shite."
Yeah, it has got very negative connotations, in particular for a striker. I think it is about getting players in the box around him, because there's no way one or two lads are going to cause back four any sort of trouble, unless it's the Everton back four, any sort of trouble in the area, because there's just not enough bodies in there. So it's like you pack that box with 3, 4, maybe 5 players in an attack, so long as they can get back quick enough. We were never going to do that today because of the setup. I wouldn't play a 2, because as I said, if you play like a 4-4-2, you've still got 2 in the middle, and I don't think it's enough. Yeah. But today was a chance to play 2 up front if you play 5-3-2, but he never. But I think it is about getting more support in the attacking areas. So when the ball's getting whipped into the box, get more players in there around him. I also think Jack Harrison had his best game for us against Newcastle when he played in that sort of 10 role. And he's not played there since. It's like that old Iwobi conversation all over again, isn't it? The one time he plays 10, he had a good game, and you don't see him there since. So I find things like that a bit weird. And I think
he's got Dan Zuma there as well, Les.
Well, this is what I was going to say. I think Dice's sort of role in all this is he doesn't trust the squad. He's got 11, 12, 13 players who he trusts, and that's it. And you can't do that. You just can't do it. You know, they are all decent professional footballers. They've got to be trusted to do something. You can't keep flogging the same players, because then you're getting good players running to the ground. They lose effectiveness. They could get injured easy. They could, lose fitness throughout the 2, 3, 4 games. He's got to trust the squad more. That's the big thing for me. He's got, he played Dobbin a couple of times, didn't he? We've not seen him since. I think he was actually going to come on against City. I'm sure he got stripped off and then went back when they scored. So he's just got to trust these fringe players that we've got. And I think that's the big issue for me, because he really is flogging this squad. And it is 1 or 2 injuries away from disaster when you think about it. You look at the Corey's out, and we've sort of fallen to pieces a little bit. And you look at that midfield, I saw Onana for me was strolling around again today. He's got no urgency about him at all.
Well, his mate Garner was next to him. Les, again, I was talking to Matt, who's not his biggest fan anyway, and I completely agree with him today. He just looked like he wasn't even playing, just like a ghost.
No, the 2 of them weren't. As I said, neither of them are good enough to play in the 2. They're just not. So I think you're right. One, today that could have been one for Garner Gate to come in. Maybe add a little bit of urgency, because one thing you will get from him, he runs around a lot, he snaps into tackles, and he adds that little bit of urgency, that little bit of bite you need in the middle. The amount of times, like Garner was just like anonymous today. But the thing that frustrated me with Onana is when he goes to ground, he takes an age to get back up. He goes down, he sits there, he holds his ankle, he looks around, he gets up. It's like, get back up, get back after that ball. It's just a basic football thing, that isn't it? You lose the ball, you go back after it. And it was that I think the fact that they were both anonymous, but things like that just don't help, because then there's no urgency in the game.
They're the type of things when you're 2 or 3-0 up, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't.
When you're in the position we were today, when you're in the position you are today, and I agree with you. By the way, I thought it was a really, really poor performance. I think he's been poor probably best since the Newcastle game, really, Onana. But them sort of things really highlight themselves when you're not in a good run of form. And I want to be that person who's like, look, he's only 22. We can't rely on him. He needs an experienced head next to him, and that's why I alluded to the fact that I thought if Idrissa Gueye's next to him, maybe you get a better performance out of him. But at the same time, and me and you, Dave, have had this conversation ad nauseum. You want him to, with the ambitions that he himself has said he has, of playing Champions League, of doing this, of doing that, of playing on the grander stage in European football. You're looking for a player like that to really grab the game and dominate it. And he just hasn't for a while now. But when he does, how good can he be? Do you know what? It's just a frustrating one with him. He is a bit of an enigma, and I'm probably more prone to the side of, look, he's a young lad, probably needs a bit of help around him. Time of year, you know, we played a lot of games. He's probably carrying a little knock here and there as well, like they all do at Christmas time. Don't be too harsh, but it's just them little things like you just mentioned there, Les, and I agree with you. Just lying down, not getting, not really any urgency. When you lose, and they really stick, and you really notice them more than when, you know. And I know it's an obvious thing to say, but when you're 2 or 3-0 up, you just, them things don't come into consideration.
Just before we come to the end, the post-match, I want to ask you both, given what we've spoken about with Dyche and the players and what he decides to do and subs and all that. Do you look at, and this is, I'm trying half of this not to sound like a knee-jerk reaction here, which obviously is natural for us all to get when you've lost the game at any point. But I think it's a common trait, this. I think that you see so many Everton managers consistently, and I've banged on about it for many years for ex-manager, whoever we've had, issues with substitutions. Has been a massive problem. I've no idea why. You think back to, I don't know, maybe apart from Ancelotti, who was with us, who obviously a lot more of a pragmatist in terms of the team we had at the time when he came in, which obviously wasn't that different to what we are nowadays. But I often ended up leaning towards the thought that there's a lot of naivety, and I'm not too sure why. And especially here with Dyche, who, like we say, me and you had many conversations about him being the right man to be in a situation like this. You would not pick probably a better individual to have to come out of the shadow that we've been put into with them deductions and whatnot. And look, maybe it is a knee-jerk reaction that I'm saying here, but I'm surely, going back to what I asked Les there, I mean, surely there's got to be a better solution than what he's come up with to how we play the way in which we did today. How you set up against the side that I'm not saying we'd expect to get results from, because Wolves are a really good side. I think Gary O'Neill's going to be a terrific manager going forward. But let's face it, they're less of an opponent than Spurs and City. For us going there, I'm not saying that I expect us to get a result, but I'd be much more confident about getting those results away at Wolves than the are with the other two. The way he's gone about doing what he did shocked me, really, for how he is. And before we finish, just want your thoughts on why you think he's gone in that direction. Now, I know we've said about it's that time of year for injuries. It's the time of year where people have got enough, but they've got to step up and still do what they possibly can. Doesn't feel Everton like that, given the changes that he has made. I'd love to get in his mentality of why he's done what he's done, basically.
I think Les made a very good point before when he said about he doesn't trust the fringe players.
Yeah.
And this could be a topic for a whole show, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, never mind the post-match, but he has got, you know, Coleman's played today, and that's Moyes' era. He's got players from the Marco Silva era. He's got players from Frank Lampard. He's got players from, who else have we had managing us? God, everyone. Koeman. He's got a mismatch that isn't his squad, and we have got to sit tight, unfortunately. And, you know, Kevin Thelwell come out the other day, didn't he, and said about the fact that this January transfer window is going to be very quiet unless they think they can get a loan in of someone who's going to benefit and help the squad. I think until we see a day, 2 or 3 transfer windows down the line where you go, this is Sean Dyche's squad now, he will then probably trust them the same way. And probably this explains a lot why he goes to the likes of Michael Keane and Tarkowski and these players, because he's managed them before. He's probably a bit reluctant with Danjuma. Danjuma just screams to me of someone who is a signing that we've earmarked in the past. We had an opportunity to bring him in, and Dyche just doesn't fancy him, and probably doesn't trust him enough to come on in games like today. And I know he gave him a little opportunity against Spurs, but what did he do when he come on against Spurs? He was wasteful. And I think that until you get a squad, and this goes back to the old thing we've said for years, it's the Everton lack of stability, lack of cohesion, lack of everything else. And he's done a fantastic job in them circumstances, and I think we're all in agreement to that. But I think the fact that him and so many Everton managers in probably the last 5 years have seemed to do this, and we seem to have this recurring theme of lack of subs, not change things, not. We've all had the displeasure, shall I say, of seeing this over the last 5 years. These managers haven't, and I think he's probably just trying to go with what he knows and what he thinks is best. And until he gets his squad, you think of Moyes, like Moyes' last 3-4 years with us, they were his squad, they were his players that he signed, and he knew them inside out, and that reflected in the fact that we had a very stable and solid side that finished, all these
European side, wasn't it, for quite some time? Yeah,
exactly. And I think he's probably looking at that and gone, well, there's only a couple of players there I've signed. I like the look of a few of them, that they're my type of players, and I trust them. But ultimately, he probably just goes with what he knows, and probably what's brought him so far, relegation survival, and the success, the relative success we've had this season. So I think it was very telling what Kevin Thelwell said about the fact that they're trying to look now into the next 2 or 3 transfer windows, as opposed to, which I think is great strategy, by the way, but again, that's for a whole nother show, as opposed to scattergun protest, get everyone in now who we don't necessarily like or trust or know. We just want to signings for signing's sake,
which has shot us in the foot so many times, hasn't it?
Yeah, and it's just one of them things. I think that managers got their own ideas, they've got their own stamp on things, they probably want their own footprint on how things go, and he's probably looking around that dressing room and thinking, like Les said, there's only 12, 13, 14 of you who I can trust with this, and as we move on as a club, unfortunately for a lot of you are not going to be a part of this moving forward, or fortunately in a lot of players' cases, they might want to be out the door and gone. So I think that's what it is, and I think it's just one of those things in the evolution of us in the next 2 or 3 years. These type of results are going to happen. We're going to unfortunately just have to sit tight and take it and be patient. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. Whilst there was a bit of the Dave Downey in me when we won 4 games and on the trot, not going too high and thinking we're going to get into Europe, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. There's also not too much of the downside in it by losing these last 3 games. I don't think that we are. I think certainly we'll stay up, and I'll go on record as saying that, because I think we're much better than, I'd say, 6-7 teams in that league. And I'll name them right now. We're a better team than Brentford. I think we're better than Palace. I think we're better than Forest. Certainly the 3 already down there. There's 6 who I've named. I think we're better than. So I don't have any worry with us staying up. And I'm not. I know the league table doesn't look great at the minute, but I'm just not worried. I am worried, of course I am, because you should be when you're 17th in the Premier League. Of course you should. But I'm not going to get too down about today's result. I think that looking forward, it's still half a season left. And I think over the course of half a season, with the stability that's continually growing, we'll be okay. With another summer transfer window, and possibly, a few player transactions and different things like that, will be fine. But it is a worry and a concern with a few of the things we've talked about and from what we've seen today. And of course, we've got to address that, and that's his job. We've talked about his role. He has got to find a way. That's what he gets paid the money for, and we can't. I don't feel at this moment in time we've got reason to doubt him, because he's proven so far that he does find a way. He found a way last season, and look, he's done very well up to now. We've just got to give him that time and that opportunity, and just stay for the course, and hopefully things will go in the right way, in the right trajectory that we want them to. I'm confident they will, but that's not taking away the fact that when you see performances like today, yes, things have got to be addressed very quickly before then performances like today become the norm.
I think just quickly from me, Dave, sorry.
Yeah, go on.
One thing that does need addressing, and I don't want to use him as a scapegoat because it's too easy, but I've just seen some stats on Michael Keane about when he started against when he's not started. Now, the whole team can't fall apart because of one man. I think he's at times he's hapless, but at other times he's just dead unlucky. But I mean, these stats, like when he started under Dyche, the win ratio is 13%. That's 15 games, 1-2 drawn, 5 lost, 8. When he's not started, the win ratio is 60%. Played 23, won 14, drawn 3, lost 6. That's pretty stark and pretty telling. And I do think that could be an Achilles heel for him. Much in the same way Tim Howard was. for Roberto Martinez in the last season when he played.
You just mean being overly loyal to players who
Yeah.
you trust in the past.
Yeah, sticking with him could become a real issue when you look at, I don't want to dig him out like that, but I saw those stats and it's like, that's pretty stark and that is quite telling. So I think, I know all managers do have the favourites, but it's one of those things I think he's going to have to get over because that looks problematic to me, that.
Well, I mean, it has to be, doesn't it? Because we're sitting here banging on about playing a 5 there and how it's meant to be something that's, gone pear-shaped whilst we've played there away at Wolves. The irony in all that is he's the one you take out of the 4, isn't he? Yeah. Inevitably. I don't know an Evertonian who wouldn't take him out of that 5 when you're trying to go back to a back 4. And that's an issue with Dyche as well. And look, I've spent a lot talking about Dyche and the issues that have been with him. I think Warren's made an excellent case there, Les, about how he's a man to trust, given what he's done. I suppose we're diving into a little bit of thinking, the end of the year right now and what happened in 2023, really, given when he come in to sort of keep them safe in the Premier League. Do you agree with what Warren said there about generally feeling fine? I mean, it's like he said there, but as it stands right now, you've just lost an appalling performance and you're 1 point above the relegation zone. Are you still feeling that level of, I don't know, Warren can come back on me and say if I'm wrong saying this, but I'd say more calm than anything else. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I'm feeling pretty much the same. It's not a time to get too despondent about stuff. Come back to us in like start of April if we're still sort of digging around. Yeah, if we're still sort of around there, then it's the time to panic probably. I don't, as Warren said, I don't think we'll do much in January. I don't know where we'd get the players in that we need. I don't know what positions we necessarily need to target, but I don't think there's too much of a need to be despondent. But I do think the manager needs to be more receptive to other players in the squad and use them, even if it's only to give players a break at certain times, because you can't flog this squad for this season. It's a very paper-thin squad with some really good players in it and can play really well as a team, but they've all got to be on it. No one can get carried in that team. You can't have any passengers. And that's, that for me, that's what's going to get us out of it. Probably better team management. And yet, as you say, he's done well over the course of the 12 months he's been in now. We can't really have too many complaints because he kept us up last year. And, as you say, without the points deduction, we'd be I think a point behind Wolves. We would have been ahead of Wolves until today. The worrying thing for me today was that should be a mid-table clash. They shouldn't be beating us 3-0 that easily. So if we had those 10 points back and then you're getting walloped by someone who's in and around the same area as you, that's always a concern. So yeah, I don't know. It's there's a lot on the manager here. He's got to earn his money now because we're not going to get too many reinforcements in. He's going to have to sort of make do with what he's got, to use another old Moyesism. So I don't know. We'll see. But I'm not too despondent yet.
Yeah, we'll go with what we've got. Palace FA Cup next week. Just a quick word from both of you. You asked?
Yeah, I'm going. So I am.
Really? I just go and have a nice night. But I don't want to go back to what I was on about with
Dave. I'll say it for you because I don't want you to get the stick again.
Go on.
Because I'll take the stick this time round. In the grand scheme of things, and it's horrible to say this, Thursday doesn't matter because of what we've had in the last 2 years, the suffering, the anxiety, that horrible feeling in that Bournemouth game at half time when we knew Leicester were winning. We don't want to go anywhere near that again. So if it meant sacrificing this to ensure that we had fitter players, for instance, if Doucouré's fit for Thursday against Palace, I wouldn't want him playing. I'd want him ready for the Villa game instead. So in the grand scheme and the grand context of things, we're not probably ready at this point in time for an FA Cup run. However, if you think I'm going to be sitting there Thursday night watching it and thinking that I'm not going to be screaming and shouting and wanting us to win and wanting us to score and wanting us in the half of the fourth round, then you've got another thing coming, because of course we all do. We want to win every game we play. Yeah. But it's just the fact that we don't want what we've had the last 2 years again, because that's been horrible. And I think that me and you are in agreement with this, Dave. And if I'm putting words in your mouth, tell me I'm wrong. We want to get to April, like Les has just said there, and this not even be a conversation. Just like more of what are we going to do in the summer, ready to prepare ourselves for our final season of Goodison. That's the conversation we want to have. So in the grand scheme of things, I hate saying Thursday doesn't matter, because of course it does. Of course it matters. It's a trophy at stake. Of course it matters. But me and you just don't want another Bournemouth situation again, or another last day survival situation again. And I think we feel the cup could potentially be a distraction from us getting to that point, if that makes sense. So so listen, if you disagree, aim all your air at me, not at Dave. Give Dave a week off, all right? Tweet me instead.
Yeah,
no, I've surprisingly got one more person to throw into this. If you go and look at Matt Jones's Twitter, he said take the under 12s over to Crystal Palace in the FA Cup. Matt Jones doesn't give a shit about the FA Cup.
See, I'm the complete opposite. I think momentum's a huge thing, and I think cup games can provide a nice bit of respite from the league, because you've got the drudge, especially when you're down the bottom. You've got it's quite relentless playing league matches, thinking, we've got to get something here, got to get something here. Cup game, in that regard, it gives you a bit of a free hit. You can maybe go out and enjoy it, just playing things. You know what? If we get beat, it doesn't really matter that much. But then you win that game, you're on a win and run. So
this is where
it's a good way to keep momentum going, to be honest. But
that's a fair point.
The one thing with all of this is, the thing that got pelters for with me Fulham comments was, you're playing Fulham, a side that you would not expect, but you'd be confident of beating at home to get you through to a semi-final. You go and do well in the FA Cup. You get drawn up and you just won the third round. So how many is it to get to the final? 5 wins you've got to do to get to the final?
I think it's 7 to win it, isn't it? I think it's 6, isn't it?
We've got to win 4. Got to win 4 to get to Wembley.
But this is why I feel it's even more important to, the rest of what we've got is much more important, because you've got to win that many to get through to a final and then win it. Whereas the one that I was banging on about with Fulham, I can totally understand the criticism that I received saying, Dave, we're nearly in the semi-final. If you go and win over 90 minutes against Fulham, I said we should be beating at home. So that's why I'm in sort of a very, very long said way of the FA Cup. I really couldn't care less. Like you say, it comes with you being an Evertonian. You see them play in any competition, you want them to win the games. But look, to put that scenario the other way around, if you were sacrificing a place in the FA Cup, but you go and beat Aston Villa, which one would you take? So there's an argument.
There's an argument as well, and I don't subscribe to this, but there is an argument to say that losing that Fulham game has derailed the momentum we built up previously. So it's a double-edged sword in that respect. But
correct, yeah.
But I think, Les makes a great point. We go and win against Palace, who I think they'll probably put out a second string or third string side themselves, and then we're in the hat for the next round. We draw a lower league team at home. Of course, it builds momentum, and it's a win, and it's a different, it's something to take your mind off the relentlessness of the Premier League. But I do feel that if you ask me what would I rather have, a cup win or be in mid-table by April, I'm going to pick mid-table by April. And I know that's horrible to say because we're desperate for silverware, but at this moment in time, I just feel that's where we are as a football club. After the last 4 or 5 years of chaos, we need some stability.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
I think that's a good way to end 2023, lads, with a negative comment about Everton. So, where else would be the best place, considering we need to stay up and we've got our last game to do it? But I agree with both you lads there. I think that the point we get to the spring, we won't be in anywhere near as much trouble as we have been to try and save ourselves in the Premier League at the end of the season. Thanks to everyone who listens to us. Bit of a goodbye for us all on a year. I think that's our 12th year since I started the Blue Room. So thanks to everyone who comes along with us every single season. It's more and more people who come and listen to us and get involved with us and throw their comments our ways, throw the abuse my ways over coming up with stuff like I did against Fulham. Welcome for more of that, and thanks so much for the 2023. Let's hope it's a much better 2024. And we look towards that brand new stadium as well, which won't be far away as soon as we hit the new year.